ask for your help today. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, nothing like getting to talk about money. What a sensitive subject for many people. When you think of marriages, oftentimes some of the difficulties come around finances and some of the challenges. And when they talk about various things, usually money's at the top of a list of stressors in a home. And so we live, though, in a culture that chases wealth like it's the answer to every ache in our soul. Whether it's commercials that tell us more is better or promotions promise that just a little more will only satisfy. But Ecclesiastes, it's so interesting how Ecclesiastes does this for us, but Ecclesiastes steps in like this wise preacher. Here he comes as the preacher, the teacher that's mentioned, and he says right there, if you notice it in verse 10 even, it was already read for us, he says this, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his increase." You know, and here's the irony, I believe, and one commentator put it this way. He says, those who crave money the most often enjoy it the least. I thought that was a really interesting thought, and it kind of spoke to my heart personally of like, you know, those who crave money the most often enjoy it the least. Why? Why is that? Why is it that a craving or a love, as the Bible often speaks about, the problem is not actually money. The problem is the love of money. It's the desire for more. It's the lack of contentment. But why? Because here's the reality, when money becomes your master, joy becomes your slave. Isn't that interesting? Is that oftentimes when money becomes that slave, or when money becomes your master, naturally, then joy kind of becomes almost like a slave. It becomes an enemy. You're always wanting joy and you just can't have it because you're desiring more stuff and things. Reality is it always takes more than it gives. And sadly, this isn't just a financial issue. This isn't just a finance problem. Ultimately, it's a heart problem. And Ecclesiastes is inviting us to look at it much, much deeper. Now, to help us understand this passage, I want to kind of give a little bit of the structure to it, because this one has a unique structure, the section that we're going to look at this morning. And the preacher is using a literary device known as a chiasm. And a chiasm, what this basically means is that the writer builds this section kind of like a sandwich. I mean, I don't know, how many of you like a sandwich? I don't like a tomato sandwich. I like some meat in the middle, you know. Some of you might be vegetarians or whatever, but it's like, so a sandwich is kind of like there's the bread, right? There's the top and the bottom, and then there's the middle. And so kind of picture this section that we're going to read, this chiasm, as like there's the one part of the bread that he's going to be teaching on, and then right in the middle of his teaching, right in the middle of it is like the good stuff, what I consider the good stuff, the meat, the various things of the sandwich. Like the bread's great, but it's like, what makes a good sandwich is what's inside of the sandwich. And here in this passage, he's going to deal with both. We're going to have the bread of the futility of wealth, and then he's going to come to the meat of what he's trying to teach, kind of the pinnacle, if you will, if you look at it as an analogy of going up a mountain. And he's going to teach on the contentment and joy that's found apart even, and you can find actually in wealth, but also apart from wealth. And then he's going to return right back to the same sandwich aspect of just another angle of the bread for us this morning. And so the preacher ultimately begins with, and I want you to notice this first, is in kind of this first section, this first part of the sandwich, the top of it, I guess you could say. He's dealing with the deceptive promise of wealth. The deceptive promise of wealth. I mean, he says it right there in verse 10, kind of the big theme of it. And again, I'll read it again. He says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money." But isn't it deceptive? Isn't it promise you something? Doesn't it seem like, man, even if you remember, depending on the stage of life you're in, you might have remembered when you first were in college and you're like, dude, I have nothing to my name. I remember like just begging my parents to put a little bit of money in my bank account because I have a date on Friday. I'm like, I have no money to pay for gas or do anything. And maybe you were in that stage and you're like, man, if I could just have a better job or something like that. And we think, man, if I have more money. But if you got to where you are now and you look back, you're like, and why am I still potentially not satisfied, even though, man, I would have longed to have what I thought I would have today when I was back then. You see, it's the deceptiveness of riches. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money. It's deceptive. But notice what he does in verses 8 and 9. First, we kind of see that wealth can bring and does bring some injustices as well. Notice what he says in verse 8 and 9. Interestingly, verse 9, it's like, who knows what he means? Even if you have an ESV Bible, at the bottom, if you notice a little tick mark there for you, right at a footnote, it says, the meaning of the Hebrew verse is uncertain. You're like, well, thanks. That's super helpful. Thank you, translators of the ESV, for this. But look at verse 8, and we'll try to do our best with verse 9 as well. But notice what he says. He says, if you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. And then he says in verse 9, kind of the one that I was just mentioning, but this is gained for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. What I thought of, the first thought that I had when I was even just kind of discussing this with some of the guys this past week and talking about this passage, one of the first thoughts that I have was going back to Samuel. And if you remember in 1 Samuel, the people of Israel, right? If you remember, it starts this way. God is their leader. There's Moses who's leading them, but ultimately, God is like the king of them. He's leading his own people. And what happens? They're like, man, we want a king. We want to be like the rest of the nations. And you're like, are you sure? And Samuel's like, are you sure this is what you want? God, are you sure that you want someone else? But his reasoning was this, because he's like, man, you know what's going to happen, right? All of a sudden, that king's going to want your children, and that king's going to want your children to cultivate his fields. And he's going to use you for his own benefits. And then there's going to be all these different hired hands who can be these slave owners, or there's going to be these people who are going to control things, and they're going to use their status and their wealth for their own benefit and not for you. And you're going to have injustices come. You see, oppression even here is not just individual. There's an aspect of it, like a systemic aspect here as well, that just what comes with wealth. We see this, how this works in our government today, right? You have the wealthy, you have all the bureaucracy and all those things, but naturally there's the people who are paying, who are behind the scene giving deals to make sure they get through something they want. They're giving money to those things. There's so much money and so much injustice even in these things. And he's saying here, even wealth brings injustices. Even kings benefit off the backs of others. Notice in verse 10 through 12, we see a restlessness here. So not only do we see this, the injustices that can come through wealth and power, but what we see next is this restlessness. Notice verse 10 through 12. He says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money. This is a verse we've already read a few times now. Nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. Look what he says here in verse 11. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. Isn't this fascinating? I came across this article not too long ago, and it was an article that was written in 2022 by MarketWatch. And in their article, the headline of the article said this. It says, 1 in 3 Americans earning $250,000 a year or more, so 250 and up, say they live paycheck to paycheck. And I know some of you that maybe don't make that kind of money, you're thinking, really, 1 in 3 people could have $250,000 coming in through the door, whether that's one individual earner or 2 individual earners, that they are still living paycheck to paycheck? That's the reality of what happens, right? You have more stuff, you buy more expensive stuff, and that more expensive stuff requires more. I've come across all the statistics, right? There's so many statistics here. We were just talking this week of various people in a neighborhood and how many different people, their struggles because of the status and wealth and the desire for more and things, and how it led to some bankruptcy and various struggles in their lives. There's a restlessness, he's saying here, with wealth. He's saying it's promising you these things, but what we find is this laborer who's unsatisfied, or this person who's unsettled. They can't stay. They're staying up at night, thinking about the market, the stock market, and the various struggles and the highs and lows, especially over the past few months even. It's going up and down and up and down, and mostly down a little bit here and there. And you can be so restless, so concerned about these things. that there's no joy, there's no contentment. I'm reminded of John Rockefeller, one of the famous businessmen from several generations ago, but John Rockefeller was famously asked how much money was enough. And this is one of the most wealthy people on the planet at the time, and here's what he said. His reply was, just a little more. How much money is enough? Just a little bit more. What's the best? Another quote from him was like, what was the most important million? He said, the next most important million. An insatiable desire for more. But the reality is, riches, they disturb, they are sleep. While the laborer, notice here, interestingly, he says, while the laborer sleeps, sweet is the sleep of a laborer. It's this picture of a laborer who's worked hard, and he goes to bed at night, and he wakes up, and he does it again the next day. But there's a difference about this person, and we're going to get there, and that's where Ecclesiastes is heading us as we're working up the mountain or getting to the middle of that sandwich. He's getting to the contentment and joy, but he's revealing some of the problems that money brings naturally. And there's this restlessness. It's the reality that the more you have, the more you want, and the more others want from you. NFL players, I think the statistics were about after 2 years, I think it was almost 78% of NFL players after 2 years from making the money that they made were filing for bankruptcy or were in financial distress. You're like, man, if I just had $1 million, all you got to do is look at the stories of lottery winners and all the things. I think it was said, one commentator even mentioned the story as well about Bernie Kosar. As he finished his career, eventually over time he ended up having to file for bankruptcy, and it was found during all those hearings and those kind of things that he had 60 cell phone plans that he was paying for. It's what happens, right? I mean, you see it with these athletes and the ones who make people. They're paying this person, that person. They got accountants to account other accountants, and they've got maids and servants and all these things and these different people to make their food and all these subscriptions, and they're paying for their mom stuff and their family stuff and their nephew stuff and all these things. And quickly, there's all these leeches coming for their money, and he's saying there's a restlessness when it comes to wealth. But notice he continues on. He's not finished yet. Verse 13, look at verse 13. Notice here the insecurity and ultimately how riches are insecure and ultimately lost. He says, there is a grievous evil that I have seen. This is verse 13. Under the sun, riches were kept by their owner to his hurt. And those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is a father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness and much vexation and sickness and anger. You see, there's an aspect where riches, we think that will bring security, and many choose to go that route, and they're like, man, they're so worried about everything. They're hoarders, or they're holding almost too much because they're fear of the future. Obviously, we have to be wise stewards of our resources. But here he's speaking about an insecurity, and ultimately, all of it is gone. The reality is you leave this world as you came. As he says here, naked you came, and naked you will leave. You know, it's been said, you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. And it's true, whether it's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and you and I, we will leave this world with exactly the same amount. Nothing. Think of Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, whose, I think, net worth at the time of his death was about $10 billion, but he died. And he doesn't take any of that with him. There's an aspect of that is vanity. It's like this, like it shouldn't be this way, but that's the reality. That's the way God has designed even life under the sun, that there's something more beyond this life. There's something more beyond having wealth and having riches in the pursuit of more. And ultimately, the final fruit of money worship, as we worship this money, as we bow down to the knee of it, is darkness and frustration and anger. And so here, as we see kind of the deceptive promises of wealth, we're going to look at a second. We're going to come back at the end to look at verse 18 through 20. So we're going to skip for now and go to chapter 6. So if you have a Bible there again, chapter 6, what we find next is the emptiness of success without satisfaction. So Ecclesiastes here on the other side of the sandwich, going to the bottom piece of the bread, look at verses 1 and 2. He says this. He says, there is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. You see, what he's saying here is wealth without enjoyment is really a grievous evil. Like if you it's great that you have stuff, but if you can't live and enjoy life, and what he's going to get at is there's a contentment that's missing. There's an insatiable thirst for more, and there's an insatiable thirst because there's something missing in your life, and you're desiring more, and so you pursue more things, and you go after things. And he's saying that wealth without enjoyment is a grievous evil. He's saying here that it's possible to have everything your heart desires. And listen, some of us, we don't know what that's like. Like we don't even have the capabilities of having more things. Like you're like, well, that's great. He's telling us this, but I don't even have the capacity to do that. I don't have the ability to have that. I don't have that. Here's the reality is if this is Solomon writing, he had everything. He's like, I literally did it. Like, let me be the test for you. I went after all of it. I had wealth unimaginable. I had women all over his household. I had all things. I could get whatever I wanted. I made gardens. I did things. Anybody could feed me, serve me. I had everything that you could desire and pursue in this life. And he's the one telling us it's a grievous evil and it's vanity. Because rather, what he's saying here is wealth without enjoyment is a grievous evil. Someone else may enjoy what you earned. You worked hard for, and someone else gets to enjoy the benefits of your labor rather than you even getting to enjoy the benefits of your labor. There's an emptiness that can creep in even through the pursuit, and even not just the pursuit, the having wealth. He goes on in verses 3 through 6 to see, through verse 6, to see a full life without joy is worse than never being born. I mean, you hear that? A full life without joy is worse than never being born. Look at verse 3. He says, if a man fathers 100 children, I know some of you are on a path to that, right? Sam, you're going to keep going, right? Just going to keep having children? He's like, no. But he says here, some are on a path to, you could have this, 100 children. Let's get verse 3. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. You're like, a full life without joy and contentment is worse than never being born. He's saying without rest, joy, or relationships, even you get to live 2,000 years of life. He's saying those 2,000 years of life are futile and it'd be better off for a stillborn child. He does mention a few things here, and we're not going to build a doctrine off of this per se, but it is interesting that he says some of these things. Notice what he says in verse 4. So he's saying, but at burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. So he says in verse 4, for it comes in vanity and goes in darkness. And in darkness, its name is covered. And you're like, what is he meaning here? It's almost a picture of this, like when a stillborn child comes to this world and leaves immediately, or doesn't even really get to come into this world. We don't know it's the child's personality. It's in dark. It's in the dark. We don't know what this child would be like, what its dreams would have been, its personality, all those things. It's just kind of clouded in darkness because of death. And he says, moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything. Yet it finds, interestingly, he does say this, yet it finds rest rather than he. I think there is a promise there for those maybe who've had a miscarriage or even a stillborn child, that I believe that there's rest for this child. It's non-existent. I believe that life forms in the womb. and that God cares deeply for the child that is in the womb. And whatever that looks like for all of eternity with this child here, he's saying it finds rest rather than this person who's lived this life but is not content, doesn't have joy, may have access to wealth unimaginable, but he's saying this stillborn child would be better off than he. You see, a full life without joy is worse than never being born. Then he finally finishes kind of his sandwich here in verses 7 through 9. And he's saying this appetite is endless. There's a constant appetite. But really, contentment is quite rare. I think we could just look at our culture and our world and maybe just look right at our own hearts. And we find that contentment is rare, but rather there's an appetite and a hunger that just is never ending. Notice what he says in verses 7 through 9 here. All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. You see the picture. It's pretty obvious here. He's kind of overstating all of these things, that wealth will never satisfy. There's a futility of wealth. There's this futility, and there's an emptiness of even success without being able to enjoy the success, without a joy. But that joy comes through contentment. And he's saying there's a constant thirst in our hearts for more, and you can eat but never be fulfilled. You'll never be full. He says even the wise and poor are prone to chasing shadows. Like we will chase after these things thinking that this will make us happy, but it's empty. It's like a shadow. It has no value. It has no sustenance. And over again, whether you have plenty or you don't have plenty, you can be so consumed with money and the desire for more that you're not able to enjoy life as it is currently. You know, a few weeks ago we talked about the seasons of life. And how we can find joy in the midst of the various seasons of life. And so we need a solution. Like, what is the solution to all this emptiness and all this futility? Like, if we all feel that. I'm confident we all feel the pull for things and stuff and more, and just a little bit of dissatisfaction in life. And so we come to the meat of the sandwich. And I want you to see this. This is back in chapter 5, verse 18 through 20. And what we see here is the gift of joyful contentment. What we get here is the gift of joyful contentment. Look with me at verses 18 through 20. He says, "Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart." I mean, notice that, like verse 19, this is the gift of God. It is, you're pursuing, you're trying to attain, you're trying to attain, you're trying to grasp at all these things, and you're hoping. Remember back in chapter 4, the person who's toiling, and he's saying, like, better is the quietness of one hand full of toil and another hand full of quietness, of rest, of contentment. But many of us are pursuing for more, and we're trying to get handfuls, and we're filling ourselves up and putting it all in our pockets, and we're so full, but we're never satisfied. We're discontented. And here he's saying, notice, rather than the pull and the trying and the earning and the doing, he's saying there's something here that we need to see, that today is a gift given. Do you see this? This is the gift of God. You see, joy isn't found in accumulation, but in receiving these gifts. Joy is found in receiving it as a gift. I love this. He's saying eating and drinking and working with gratitude in your hearts. Like, man, enjoying that meal. Remember, God gave you the taste buds that you have. Like, some of you have different tastes than others, right? Like, some have, like, man, like, super simple. Like, some love spicy foods and those things. But, like, God has given us these taste buds for enjoyment of life. It's not like, man, God just made us and he's like, all right, love me, serve me, bow down to me, worship me, and die. No, he gives life to us. He gives us laughter. He gives us friendship to share a meal together and enjoy that meal, to laugh and enjoy and find happiness in that time. I don't know about you, but like, man, in the middle of a hot summer, there's something about sweet tea. I mean, actually, there's something about sweet tea all the time. But like, like you can just enjoy that as a gift. Some of you that love lemonade, man, it's July 4th weekend and it's so hot in Georgia, like really hot. You're like, why would we ever go outside even in this weather? But man, if you have a glass of lemonade or whatever your favorite drink is, you can enjoy that moment as a gift from God to you. Like the taste on your tongue, the satisfaction it brings. No, is it going to go away and you're going to need more? Yes. But let that be a reminder of like, man, I'm meant for more. Like this isn't supposed to just fully and finally satisfy me, but I can enjoy it today. I can enjoy this laughter, this moment in time with children at the certain age that they're at. You can enjoy those little moments and man, find joy in that and enjoy that moment. Whether you have money to do great trips and big things or you're figuring out little crafts with what you got left around the house. You can enjoy each and every moment, whether you're wealthy or whether you're poor. You can have contentment. And I say this very carefully because I can see it in my heart too. The desire for other things, the desire to have more and think that will make me happier. If you're a kid in this room, you know this to be true too. You're like, man, I can't wait for Christmas. I can't wait for my birthday and that toy. But what happens? Like, what happened to? I would do a survey in a second for the children in the room. How many of you play with all the toys that you got for Christmas still to this day? I mean, we're talking about it's the end of March, right? Some of those toys, you're like, I don't know what happened to it. I forgot where it went. Or maybe some video game that was going to be the best video game ever, and you're playing this game, but quickly the game's over, and it's like, all right, well, we need another video game. We need another something, right? Because it's not meant to bring you full satisfaction. There's man, this was great, but I want something better. I want something more. As a teenager, we do this. As adults, we do this. Whether it's a car, whether it's another house, or whether it's other things that will bring hope and satisfaction to us. And maybe if I have this, it will make me feel better. Or if I had a little cushion in our income, I'll all of a sudden be better. He's saying joy is not found in accumulating more things, but rather receiving what you have and what God is giving to you as a gift. It's a gracious gift. These are daily gifts from our good and gracious God. He is a gracious God who loves to lavish you with himself. It's meant to be savored. In verse 19, we see the ability to enjoy, even the ability to enjoy is also a gift. Like even just the ability to enjoy something is a gift from God. Love this. He says in verse 19, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power, what? To enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. So, hey, you have a lot, you accept your lot and you enjoy it. You have a little, you accept your lot and you enjoy that. Now, does that mean you just continue on? Maybe God has a better plan for you, maybe pursuing education or another means for those things. But you're not doing those things in hopes that that's going to just make your life better. Because it won't. Remember what he said earlier? Here's this laborer. It's not a landowner. It's not someone of the day. It's just this laborer. But he sleeps well at night. Verse 12 of chapter 5, sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. Whether he has much food or not. I think we've all seen that, whether it's through a movie or through being overseas and seeing third world countries who have way, 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 way less than us. I mean, think about the billions of people all over the planet who would give anything to have fresh water flowing at various faucets in our homes, to have a bed to sleep on, to have a heated space when it's really, really cold, to have air conditioning on that July 4th day where you're like, I'll be inside. Dude, we're blessed, and man, can you hear our hearts complaining? I can hear mine. Dissatisfied. Here he's saying, man, even just the ability to enjoy is a gift. You can enjoy whether you have much or little. Possessions does not mean and give you guaranteed enjoyment. Actually, sadly, oftentimes it's the opposite. I could tell you story after story. We could tell you a specific story of someone we know who, if this world was looking at this person, they had reached the peak of success in work and has a lot of wealth because of it. But because of divorce and various things, he had zero connection to his children anymore. They didn't even want to talk to him. And at the end of his life, before he died, he had no one but a neighbor. And this guy was empty. Dies. It's all left behind. No U-Haul in his death. Didn't have any joy. It's a sad, sad life to live. That's why he says better is the stillborn than even that person. Great that he had success, but it all ended, and he had nothing to show for it. He had no connection to relationships in his family and his life. It's empty. You see, possessions do not equal enjoyment. Gratitude and joy in what you have is evidence of God's grace at work in your life. In verse 20, I've found this to be one of my favorite verses so far in our study of Ecclesiastes. He ends with this, chapter 5, verse 20. He says, "For he will not much remember the days of his life." You're like, what does this mean? I think it's this. It's the picture of this person is so content in God, so content and has so much joy. He says he won't even remember the days of his life because it's like it's happening so fast. He's so content. This person is so content in what he has. He's enjoying the life that God has given him. And here's what it says. For he will not much remember the days of his life. Because why? Because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Like God occupies him with so much joy that all of his days are just flying together. And this is such a wonderful life. An enjoyable life because he's filled with joy. There's a contentment. There's not a need for more because I'm content with what I have. And so his life is just full of so much joy that, man, it's like, where did all the time go? Not like, oh man, I missed all these opportunities. Looking back with regrets. Looking back with like, man, I screwed this up. No. What you see here is a man who's full of joy because God kept him occupied with joy. What a gift God is. How do you have this kind of life? This gladness that's in our heart that God has given. You see, joy in God's gifts frees us from being haunted by the brevity of life. Like if you find joy in your life and today, you're not too focused on like, man, death is imminent. Oh man, I'm going to lose it all. And you're focused on all the vanities of life that he's talking about. No, you're not escaping from these things and fearful of these things. No, you're joyfully content. You see, Jesus, and this is what I've been really reflecting on this week. Just pause here for a second. Think about this. Jesus, the God-man, comes. Have you ever wondered what like a perfect person looked like? You're like, well, that would be Jesus, right? Because he came and he was sinless. But can you imagine someone who has 100% contentment? That would be Jesus. Can you imagine what that would look like to watch him? Someone who's just content. Not a, man, I wish I had this, or like, man, I wish my dad made a little bit more so we could have a little bit nicer things. I wish my dad wasn't a carpenter, or whatever, could have complained, whatever. Like, no, completely content. Never sinned. But you know what's so interesting about that? Now, this is what kind of got me this week. So I'm leaning in even for this, because like I thought it was so fascinating. Do you know what they accused Jesus of? Do you remember? Because he would dine and eat with sinners. Do you remember what they accused him of? They accused him of being a glutton and a drunkard. Now we know he would not have gotten drunk because in his word he tells us to don't get drunk with wine, wherein is excess. So we know that he enjoyed the gifts of this life, but he enjoyed it always rightly. So much so that he's enjoying life and he's eating and dining with sinners and he's eating with these people that they're looking at him and they're saying he's a glutton and he is a drunkard. I thought that was so fascinating to think that he dines with the lost. He comes for the lost, but ultimately he dies for the lost. And here's God in the flesh, perfectly content, able to enjoy the gift of that day and have a celebration, knowing though he's fully God too, right? Let's not forget that. He's fully God. He knows he's going to the cross. He knows death is imminent, but he's able to enjoy a meal with his friends. He's not so focused, so lost and worried and fearful of those things. No, he's able to enjoy today's gifts because it's a gift from his Father. So much so that they could look at him and want to even accuse him of being a glutton and a drunkard. Again, that doesn't mean you go and get drunk. The point is, we're not. They accused him of these things. He wasn't those things. But he was so content and so there was a joyfulness from him, I'm sure, that there was something different. He stood out, obviously, just because he's God, he stood out. But even the difference between a human being who's struggling with contentment and a God who is perfectly content, living on earth and walking among people, can you imagine what the difference would have looked like? And here what we see is this is what God wants to give us today. To enjoy him. You see, when you're in right relationship with him, when you're in relationship with the God of the universe, who comes to take your place, to die on the death that you deserved, and to rise from the dead so that you too don't have to fear death, don't have to worry about death. He has eternal life in his hands. He has got you totally secure. You're safe in him. You can have joy. You can have joy even as James talks about in the midst of hardships and challenges and struggles. You can find joy. You know, I've heard it said that money is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. But I kind of think of it this way too. The more I drink from the fountain of living water, the more I want, the more I crave my Savior, the more I long for him. You see, this life is not meant to just be lived for selfish gain and pursuit of all these things. No, we can enjoy life as a gift. This is what Solomon, or the writer here, is telling us. And so to me, my call to you this morning is, if you're here today and your heart's aching for just a little more, you find yourself just not content. I just want a little more income, a little more comfort, a little more security. I want you to hear this. The deeper, and I said this at the beginning, the deeper your love for money, the less you enjoy it. Like if you're just wanting more and wanting more, the less you'll be able to enjoy it. Because idols, especially the idol of wealth, always takes more than they give. It will steal from you, but Christ, I love this, is the opposite. He's the one who emptied himself. He's the one who lowered himself and in humility came all of himself to give you true peace and joy. Money demands your life, and Jesus lays his down for you. Money wants you. It wants to get a hold of your heart. Christ has come, and he gives his life so that you can have life. So may I challenge you, may I encourage you to receive God's gifts? Receive them. The ultimate gift to receive is the gift of his saving grace to you by his death on a cross, saying, I will pay the price for your sins. Receive it. Receive that as a gift from him. That it's not something that you earn, something that you do, something that you can do to earn your way into heaven. No. You will never get it. You will never earn it. You will just be completely indebted constantly over and over again. But because why? We were not able to do that. We're far from him, and there's this immeasurable gap from God. But yet he bridged that gap by coming to die for you and for me. So receive God's gift this morning. Hey, if you're a believer, rejoice in God's blessings. Live the contented life. Enjoy what you do have. When you see your heart struggling and your heart pursuing things again, confess that and ask for his grace. He's a giving God. He'll give you the grace, the transforming grace to change your affections. He can give you the contentment that you so desperately need. So rejoice in today's blessings. And finally, rest in the one who is better than silver or gold. Rest in the one who can give you far more than what money can offer. Trust him. I love the lyric of Be Thou My Vision. In one of the stanzas it says, Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Be thou mine inheritance now and always. Be thou, so be you. Like I know sometimes when you hear these, you're like, what does this mean, thou and all this stuff? But be you, like God, I want you to be this. Be thou and thou only, the thirst in my heart. O sovereign of heaven, my treasure, thou art. May that be our pursuit, and that may we enjoy him each moment of each day and find contentment in knowing Christ. Let me pray. Father, we thank you again for your word. What a challenge it is for us, because we see the desire for more and the desire for things and stuff. And God, hear your beckoning call to find joy and satisfaction in what you have given. Thank you for your grace. The grace even of futility to draw us to something more beyond this life. There's an emptiness to these things and this stuff. And God, I pray that as we've said throughout this series, as Augustine said many years ago, God, make us restless until we find our rest in you. So the restlessness that we feel, the lack of contentment, the hunger for more, God, may that lead us to the fountain of living water who will never dry up, abounds, and flows. Thank you for the sinless Son of God who's our example of contentment, able to enjoy a meal with his friends, even right before his death on a cross. God, help us to enjoy these things as a gift given by you. And help us to do that rightly. Satan wants nothing more than us to deviate from those things and take something that's good and great and wholesome and wonderful and deviate it and make it something that's sinful and broken and never will satisfy. So God, help us in our pursuits. We want to love you more each day. God, go before us as we go into our Monday, the rest of our week, to live for you and enjoy each day as a gift, even our work.